call the Town of Rome Board meeting to order for Thursday, December 1st at 5 o'clock. Number 2, roll call starting from my left.
Jamadi here.
Asdell here.
Barhead here.
And Mr. Minter will be a little late, and Mr. Goldman is excused for the evening. Number 3, going to certify the posting of the meeting, please.
I certify that on Monday, November 28th, 2022, the agenda for the Town of Rome Board meeting for Thursday, December 1st, 2022 was emailed to the Wisconsin Rapids Tribune at 5:47 p.m., posted at Rome Town Hall at 5:29 p.m., at Quick Trip LLC at 5:55 p.m., and Nakusa Port Edwards State Bank at 5:38 p.m.
Thank you. Number 4, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve today's agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Number 5, please stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 6, citizen comments. Any comment cards? We'll dispense on number 6. No action contemplated except possible referrals to future agenda. Number 7, information updates, meeting recaps, recent correspondence, current events, and announcements. Lori, you have anything?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Bob?
I have nothing.
We're out. It's up to you, Jamie. You better have something here.
I got 2. So one, I emailed you the date and time frame for the presentation next week at UW-Madison. Again, I'm happy to book the vehicle if someone would like to take the town vehicle, but I just wanted to again mention that I did send it out by email. The other piece I would mention is, our website needs to be updated. It's not mobile enabled. There's some features on it that aren't gonna continue with Town Web. There are 2 options. This is the first option. Again, through Town Web, it's a template design. That's how they can help to keep the cost down. This is the one that we're leaning towards. We would not have this on the homepage, though. We would do our recent news and our quick links, our calendar, and subscribe to updates. The other option that we have would look like this, and I just think that the first one just fits us, our personality a little bit more. Plus, the quick links on this one these are just a little bit more, I don't know, I liked the way that they flowed a little bit better with being on the side. So, if you have strong feelings, now's the time to let us know.
One thing they may not have told you, Jamie, that we encountered with Tri-Lake's website was the number of pages that they're quoting initially was only 5, and I think we needed 7 or 8 to get ours done. So there's an extra charge for pages over 5, I believe. Okay. The other thing is, we ought to be asking them about archiving information for freedom of information.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that with the social media policy, well, piece of that with social media tonight, but all of our documents that we've loaded to the site are on there, and they did say they would transfer them over with the transfer. So
Right.
that's minutes and agendas back to like 2014, and all documents that we've put into their.
Yeah, but if somebody wanted to know what it looked like back in December of last year, we need to have that capability, right?
Do we have like backup, real-time backup for this website?
I would have to ask them about real-time backup. I mean, there are services that do provide a screenshot, but, and we've talked about some of that with that one, what was that called? Archive Social.
Archive Social.
I would have to ask what they keep as far, because I don't know that it's a picture per se of the website. It is everything that got posted to the website, but I don't know that it's a picture of how it looked on the website.
It'll probably be okay.
Strong feelings on either of the designs?
I like the first one.
This design, you can only do the calendar like this. With this design, we would do a calendar like this, which is similar to what we have now. So you get a little bit more about what this actually is that's happening on this date. And then can scroll using the arrow. is the only design where you can do a calendar. You could also do the calendar like this on this design, but I thought this was better.
User friendly,
Yeah.
much more user friendly. So you wouldn't have any paragraph at the top, like
We
a
would-
little
We would
just,
have an About Us tab that would go to that information, just to save the scroll,
oh,
yeah.
I like that with the pinning on the side of like the little note for
Right,
like,
and then it carries.
and
right?
then the next, where they have it pinned here too, that are recent notices that like can really make it stand out a little bit, but. I like those department tabs like that too.
Yeah.
If they go to a next page, that's nice.
And they would follow off the top here too. We have
Yes.
the departments up here also.
I like that.
Cool.
That's my opinion, but.
I just wanted to show a little bit before we got to the next step, which will be transferring over. That's all I had.
Oh, okay, well, this Saturday, we also have Christmas in Rome.
Yes, we
In
do.
the town here, so.
That's right.
Yeah. Come down to town hall for crafts, hot chocolate bar, visiting with Santa, and lighting of the Christmas trees.
Is this Friday the first farmer's market?
Tomorrow is the first indoor farmers market, 12 to 3:30. And this is the one that's we do it the first Friday. After this, there'll be the second Friday of every month.
All right, discuss and possible action on the following items. Number 8, discussion and action approval of the November 17th, 2022 meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve the November 17th, 2022 minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Number 9, discussion and possible action, update on possible We Energies extension of natural gas line in the Aspen Avenue, 16th Avenue, Hornet Trail, Hampton Trail, Homestead Trail, Wood Road, Deer Run Road, and Little Fawn Road area of the town of Rome.
I did just distribute tonight an update from We Energies. They contacted me and apologized that they couldn't have a representative here in person. But just a little bit more about what's happening with the project. So the update on Apache Avenue, which is this first map. They just started to marketing in that area. They have 10 that are interested so far. They would need 26 to have a no-cost main extension, and they're hoping to wrap up marketing by January 1st to determine final cost requirements. This expansion would include a fire station 2, which would be nice because that now is on, we have a propane tank out there, an LP tank, which I think just got filled. Yep, just got filled. So, it,
$1.80 a gallon.
also,
That's a deal.
would include Tri-Lakes. So I'm not sure if Tri-Lakes submitted an application, if they had interest in hooking to natural gas there at the garage.
I don't remember seeing one, but we would have interest.
Yeah. So,
I'll bring it up next board meeting, but
the other area, which is the little bit larger map with the more yellow, that Aspen Avenue area, they have 26 orders created. They would need approximately 75 for that to be a no-cost project. They have had interest from additional 15, but after follow-up contact, they haven't heard anything more. It's possible to trim down some sections of that project that would make it a little bit less costly, but at this moment, they're still hoping for this overall project. I did ask if they did have anything they'd like me to post online regarding the project, potentially a map, and maybe, like, if interested, to reach out to Amanda at We Energies directly, and we'll work with them to get something posted just in case people don't know about it, or if they didn't receive the mailing.
I have some neighbors that did not receive the mailing, even the second mailing. And we received our first one several months ago already. In fact, I think I even told you about it back in August or September. And that's why I brought it up to you, because I'm concerned. Our last letter said there's a chance of it being canceled in our area. So that's why I'm really hoping that we have as good a push with this one as we did with the first project from the town's perspective. So is our commitment still there for the ARPA funds?
Well, that's something we'd have to discuss at town board. I did ask We Energies what that commitment would be. If, again, so We Energies for the first round did the advertising. They got to a point where they had to make a decision whether or not to proceed. They said how much it potentially would be in order to complete the full expansion. They brought that number back to the town, and then we had a conversation at town board about approving the ARPA funds. So I did ask them, when will they know what that number is, and they said not until after the first of the year, once they're through this marketing, push. Then they could let us know what it would mean if the town wanted to participate in order to make it a no-cost line, what that number would be. And then we could bring that back and have a conversation if we wanted to either reinvest the ARPA funds that we're getting back from We Energies or unallocated ARPA funds to the project.
Okay, because my impression was, as a board member, we did have a conversation at a previous board meeting that we were interested to keep that initiative going in the town, so I hope we're still in agreement on that. I mean, I know we didn't make any sort of motion or anything, but my letter, our second letter, and our neighbor still hasn't even gotten a letter, which I have to let this gal know, is that if they don't get enough people by December 31st, it won't expand in our neighborhood. So that's a concern.
And again, I think they put that January 1st date on it. They would do the numbers and let us know. They know we have an interest in potentially helping depending on what that cost is. They know we have that interest. And we'll try to do that additional piece of marketing in case there are people in that area that aren't aware. I will say, and I'll give out a big shout out and kudos to Scott Bordeaux. He lived in that area last time. He rides bike and walks and runs in that area. And I think he and his dog met about everybody along that expansion piece and said to them, did you get a letter? Would you like to hook up to natural gas? Could I help connect you to the, and that was the big push at the end that really helped.
I did talk to some neighbors, and I know which ones do want to and which ones don't want to, but I do know several that did not even get the mailing, so that's why there's a concern.
And you could email those addresses to Amanda directly, or if you wanted to give Amanda's contact information.
I have it, I've already started emailing her.
Yeah, you can, and she would reach out to them directly.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then as far as maybe getting it on the town website, that maybe, there is a push to get this.
Again, I think we can do that. I just would like We Energies to approve the language that would go on the town website, just so they are also comfortable with what's being put out there.
Did we do that on the first expansion project? Did we have an announcement that We Energies was expanding?
We did not put it on the website for the first project. What we had was a display board that was in town hall here, and it said, if you live along this area, please let us know if you'd be interested in natural gas.
They sent letters also too. I believe.
Several, yeah, I think they did either 2 or 3 rounds of mailings, yeah.
Are they looking at 2 or 4 different sections? I'm looking at County Z, Aspen, Feather, and Campfire. And it seems like Aspen is a no-brainer. I mean, they got 120 lots with homes, 67 needed for free. That should be an easy one. But when you get to County Z, there's 6 potential and 9 needed for free. Not sure that makes sense, or it would happen. Feather Trail is another one. There's 45 potential and 28 were needed. Are they independent on each other? Here's another one, the Campfire. It's 55 potential, 49 needed.
So again, some pieces of the line could potentially be cut off if they don't have the interest in that area. That piece on Feather and Campfire would be 2024 if they could get Aspen in.
Okay.
So those would be expansions off if they could get the first expansion done.
Aspen,
Where did-
you would.
He's the one that was in the packet.
Oh, that one, okay, I'm looking at the new ones, I'm sorry, okay, I didn't look at the old
120
one.
lots with homes, that should be an easy one.
Right, that's why, with the letter that we got that said the deadline by, and I understand it could be a moving target, she said they needed 63, so this is a little better than what you originally said, so.
And I think there's always a little hesitation on filling out the application until people know the final cost. I will say, I agree when the town came in with the ARPA funds and We Energies was able to
That was
say,
a help.
this is going through regardless and it's 0 cost. I think they had 15 or 20 people sign up almost automatic.
Right,
I think too, the wording of their first letter that went out for the first area did not make it plain that it was not a committal type agreement, so it was just like, it didn't clearly state that it was a show of interest only. So maybe if you talk to her, you can ask her about that for her second or third letter she's gonna send out. Make sure it's plain.
Yeah. The hard part is that, I mean, they want some seriousness to it because it
Yes.
changes the cost of the line continually as people will jump on or jump off. But, it's still in the works. If you know people that live in that area, please let them know to reach out to Amanda if they have interest. Let them know that they wouldn't have to make the final commitment until they would know cost. And what I'm hearing here is that there's some agreement, that we'd have to come back with what that number is, cause we don't know it, but that we're willing to have the discussion, what it would mean if the town assisted.
Like it did last time. I think that was a real boost to it that got people excited about it. And if we can continue to roll that over like we discussed, I think it just helps the future expansion. As long as we know that money's gonna come back and we can keep perpetuating that down the line.
Well, again, that's always the risk. If you don't have enough that sign up,
True,
you've
but
made that investment.
we're getting it back right now, so let's
Yes.
keep the momentum going if we can.
What was our percentage of the last one we did? How many potential homes, and then what was the final number that did sign up?
You know,
Did
I
they
would
get-
have to look, but it was over 50%.
I think it was, yeah, maybe, let's see if they can get us a number on
Yeah.
that. And then, of course, they have to relate cost to this too, but we won't know until they start getting information back. It was on social media, and it was mostly positive on social media. There was one or two negatives, but mostly positive. Anything more on We Energies? Number 10, discussion of possible action, approval of resolution number 22, approving 2023 wages and per diems for town staff, volunteer firefighters, and committees.
The resolution was included in the packet, does represent in the majority of the cases the 4% discussed, and that was approved in the budget, except for individuals that may have had market adjustments.
I do have a question on, or one question, and then some clarifications I'd like, for the record. For the election workers, would there be money available in the budget to possibly compensate them for the 2, possibly 3, 4 elections if there's primaries at a better rate than $10.50 an hour, considering the amount of time they spend here and what they need to do?
So next year we only have 2 elections.
Okay,
So there is a potential that that number could increase, and then we could budget for it going forward. I know that there was I don't know that all the municipalities replied in the county, but several did reply on what averages are, and I think ours was a little low.
But I did increase it.
Okay, so
That is an increase.
I know.
the 1050 is reflective of across the county averages for,
What were you finding though for other municipalities? They were a little higher?
No, that's the 1050 would be the average of what I found.
An average, right, but
What I
what was the highest?
Oh, some were paying 15 an hour, but then they didn't pay overtime. We pay overtime after 8 hours, which is different than a lot of them. So if they're
some
here,
were as low though as like 750 an hour.
Yes.
Oh, minimum, right.
yeah.
How much overtime do they normally put in?
I've been splitting shifts for all of them except for the, chief inspectors. And the chief inspectors could be here anywhere from 12 to 16 hours. So,
So 8 hours of overtime, possibly at the max. For how many days a week? Do they also get paid for training, correct? So how many hours?
I usually do 2 hours of training a year. And in the past, they used to help out on election, the day before the election, they do not anymore.
Oh, okay, cause you
So
you
what
do-
is the overtime rate?
It would be time and a half.
Time and a half. It doesn't say that, just says overtime.
Any other questions, discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to, ask a question about the building inspection, and I may go back to the election one here. The building permits, these rates, are these new rates, or were these fees that were are originally included on the
Next
building?
agenda item.
No, oh, wait a minute. Aren't those on the rates?
No, this is
Oh,
just
I've got
rate-
them,
yep.
I'm sorry, I've got it clumped together with my fee schedule, I apologize.
Can we get a motion to
Well,
approve?
I'm going to first, I'll make a motion to approve with the with an increase to the election workers to $12 per hour.
And still overtime after 8?
How many hours do we probably typically have for elections?
It varies.
Rough
This
range.
last election was huge because I put additional people on that I didn't have. But your February and April, you'll only have 5 people working, so it'll be much less. So I didn't budget that much for it this year. Those are small elections compared to a November.
So 5 people, 8 hours, 40 hours you're looking at?
Plus the overtime for 3 of them, yeah.
So it's less than $100 for that? Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. Number 11, discussion and possible action, approval of resolution number 22, approving revisions to the Town of Rome fee schedule.
Again, there was a resolution in the packet, it is in track changes, so, the track changes would be reflective of where anything that would be different from last year would have occurred. Happy to take questions.
Yes, I have questions regarding the building the building permit fees.
Okay.
Are these new fees?
The
Or are-
only, everything that is there was what was previous and has been what we've charged. The ones in red, the dwelling on slab, those are fees that are being charged from the building inspector. So, and the one for electrical is crossed off for commercial because that has to be handled through the county.
So for further clarification, the dwelling on slab, an additional 200, which is in red, and slab on grade, additional 15 cents per square foot. Those are fees that were already being charged, but weren't on this fee schedule.
Being charged by the building inspector, yes.
But we're also increasing those. Those aren't his actual fees on his fee sheet.
$200 additional slab on dwellings are his fees. That's his fee is $200. But I believe he charges 11 cents for the commercial building and we would do 15, just because of the work that goes into a commercial permit.
And then we get 20% for the counter fee and the paperwork.
He takes 20% off the total, yes. I'm just gonna double check, but I'm sure that's 11 cents.
Yeah, I think that's fine. So these are just fees that weren't on there before for him, okay. My other question would be for on the Rome Town Center with it, well, one, we're not sure when it'll be completed, but two, considering the rates that we're charging for the community room and then the rates that we're looking at for the band shell. For a non-civic group or a civic group, nonprofit group, and for citizens, for a newer structure, considering what's all there, I just wanted to comment that maybe, but it may not even be completed by then, so I guess it's a moot point, so we'll save it for next year.
Well, it will be completed at some point in time, so that would be the rate or the fee.
I just tried to keep it somewhat consistent with the gazebo, which is what we had talked about when we had talked about long-term cost and maintenance, for the structure. Again, because we often have civic groups that use it, a fee is waived, and I think we've had that conversation off and on, should that fee be waived going forward? Even if it is a civic group, or should that be said that if we waive the fee, that's a sponsorship for your event?
Right.
That there's,
Yeah.
so you wouldn't be able to ask for community donation dollars and and have it gratis, the space gratis.
I would think that the fees though for, the upkeep and the maintenance and that sort of thing will be a little bit higher than our gazebo, but I guess we'll find out in due time, so. But,
Were there other properties out, other band shells that you were able to look at and find similar rates? Were there any others out there?
We did actually we asked through the clerk's list, that was semi more related to our community room, but we did ask through clerk's list about what are you charging for rentals? And that was why you do see that change, in the community room and the increase overall in the fees. We were a little low in that. The other piece is, we charge extra for the kitchen, and we just wrapped that in because oftentimes people are utilizing our kitchen or they're utilizing the whole space, whether they said they were going to or not. It's convenient because it's there. So you're gonna see an increase in almost all of our rental fees because of that, because we asked that question and we were low.
Any idea how long ago they were changed last time, or?
Oh,
been a while?
It's been a while since a
well,
long time,
okay.
yeah. I couldn't tell you the last time we've changed the fees.
Jamie, we would be expecting a fee from like Visit Rome if they were going to have a fundraiser for the park?
So again, if Visit Rome was gonna have a fundraiser for the park, they would, as they do now, they would probably submit a request and ask for that fee to be waived.
Yeah, I wouldn't think we'd want to charge it, yeah.
Yeah, that would be a board decision, but, that's what they have done now, is when they've used the gazebo for the summertime sounds, they submitted a form and
Yeah,
then,
I think we did it for 3 of them in a row.
right, and
yeah,
they were,
okay.
and then they were waived.
That's great.
I have another question on page 4 of 7 for Derek Hughes. We didn't raise the daily pass for Wednesdays or for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and holidays, but yet we raised it on Rome property owners for a single season pass and a family pass. I mean, not by much, $25 in each case, but daily passes are used by everybody that visits the park. Wouldn't we wanna see some sort of increase there?
We did increase those fees last year,
Right.
and I think that was why the property owners were not increased last year, but the other fees were all increased last year.
True, but property owners are also taxpayers, but granted, the park is funded by some grants from
There's,
this.
yeah, no levy in the park.
Right, but again, it's a benefit of living here in town and supporting the rest of the community, and so I'm just curious if we wouldn't wanna also extend some of those, increase those other fees as well. Although we do wanna encourage people to come here, the park has expanded. It's just the thought behind maybe it helps us do some other projects out there that we wanna do that they would benefit from also.
Yeah, and again, last year was our first year to go to the 20 on the day pass. I don't know that we would wanna increase that again at this point.
Okay, all right.
And we did a substantial on the rental last year. We were only 200 or 250 and we went to 500, so
That's a rental on closed days.
that's a rental on closed days, yeah.
So any day we're not open, they wanna rent it, that's 500.
Well, that's a good move, though.
Okay. Get a motion, please?
I'll move to approve the resolution for revisions to the Town of Rome fee schedule.
I'll second it. Any further discussion?
Yes, I was hoping we'd have some discussion or limited review of the transfer site increases and for the record, if we could just hear, the changes on some of this per load going to an annual pass, annual permit. I can understand why that might be, but if we could hear why staff is proposing that.
We sell no one-time passes. At this moment in time, we may only have one solid waste annual permit. We usually have one solid waste. The vast majority of all of our seasonal passes are brush and timber passes, the vast majority. And given that those are 500 or 650 for the year, most people have more than one load, and so it's just not, we don't sell any.
And that is the price you've been charging recently? That's not a new price then?
No,
So-
no, the 500, 650, 2,500, and 3,500, depending if it's solid waste or if it's brush and timber, have been the prices for some time now.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action, approval of side letter agreement between Town of Rome and Rome Professional Police Association, WPPA Lear, for the addition of a full-time community service officer and 2023 pay increase.
So we discussed this through the budget. This would have to be the adding of that additional officer, and the contract, the union contract was previously approved at the 3%, and we had determined to go to 4% this year. Those are amendments that just need to be made as side letters. This is the side letter. It has already been approved by the union.
Motion to approve the side letter agreement between the Town of Rome and the Rome Professional Police Association, WPPA Lear, for the addition of a full-time community police service officer and the 2023 pay increase.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Number 13, discussion and possible action, review of the draft social media policy for the general personnel and benefits policy manual.
Okay, so in your packets for this meeting, you all should have had a draft social media policy as well as I call it an authorized user agreement form. So you'll recall that this comes from prior communication that we had received from Archive Social, conversation that we had back on November 3rd, 2022, and some direction that I think I had received from you on possibly putting together a social media policy for consideration. What I did with that direction and some of the general comments that were made at that November 3rd meeting was, you'll see, reflect some of that in what I call the policy guidelines of this document. But what I'll do is I'll kind of walk through a general overview of the policy. Certainly happy to answer any questions that anybody has. Take any feedback that you give me and receive, and then I think the intention is to also get employee feedback before you would see a final draft for your consideration. So just a general overview is at the beginning, like most of our policies, it starts with a purpose statement. Purpose statement really just recognizes that changing technologies can have an impact on how we communicate with the public. The idea that this policy sets forth general guidelines for effective use of town authorized social media. I do have definitions then to follow. Definitions for both for social media accounts, authorized users, and posts. Those are terms that are used throughout the policy. Then, as I mentioned, I start off with what I call policy guidelines. Those are largely things that we talked about at our last meeting, and so I'd like to spend a little bit of time on that because those are general guiding principles that kind of shape what our policy and procedures, as they follow, have in them. So, as we discussed at the last meeting, or the last time that we took this up, there's a desire that our website be our primary and predominant presence. So that is right at the outset mentioned there. Also a note that wherever it's practical, content should be posted to the website and directed back. So there'll be announcements sometimes, brush pickup, for example. It might have a link to a map, and that link would be posted on the website. Really, everything that would be that would be communicated where we can would be linked back to the website. There might also be maybe an announcement about maybe licenses or something along those lines as we have a season that comes up where there's a license requirement, and we would link back to the website for where to find that license application and how to obtain that license. Then the next section talks about appropriate uses of social media. you'll see it's broken out in two different areas. One is going to be to relay time-sensitive information. You see that a lot on, for example, police department social media sites. Also where there's an emergency, you may see those kind of posts. And then the second area is going to be just broadcasting messages of public interest is what I call it. Those are gonna be things like meetings, events, programs that the town puts on. And so you'll see some references later in the policy to, and I think we already talked about it, to post things to the website or direct to the website. You're largely gonna see that ability with those broadcasting messages of public interest, more so than necessarily the emergency things. But you might also put emergency messages on the website under, for example, news and notices, because there are certainly subscribers to our website that would then be blasted out to. The next section talks about the requirement for approval for social media accounts. You'll see there that the town board is required to approve any town social media account. Authorized users manage that, and again, we'll get to the authorized user agreement, but the idea that we would designate authorized users to manage those social media accounts. And then we had a discussion at the November meeting about the idea that social media accounts must comply with public records law. So a general statement there, and it's also mentioned when we get into the procedure. So with those general guidelines in place, then it sets forth a procedure. The procedure breaks out setting up the account, the term of use agreement, the operation and maintenance of the account, and then a section on records retention. I'll just hit on some of the highlights of each of those sections. So for setting up the account, again, the idea that the town board does approve setting up an account. As far as the procedure is concerned, first that would come from an initial meeting with the administrator and department head to kind of put together maybe a proposal that you would review. So that would be to give you some packet information on maybe the request, the need for the social media site, and maybe who, well, not maybe, and who would be the authorized user that would be proposed to administer the site. So that initial meeting is really so that information can be compiled and then presented to you, because really ultimately the approval is with the town board to set up such a site. And so you'll see that then goes to the board of supervisors to consider and approve if they decide to approve it. And then once that's approved, the administrator is tasked with obtaining that completed authorized user agreement form. Then after that point, just general guidelines, I think, with actually setting up the account, it needs to use a town email. That's important for continuation of that account. There are some real concerns where those accounts get set up without a town email, and being able to continue to have access to that account if there's changeover in employees. And then a note that the social media site needs to make clear that they're maintained by the town of Rome. So if it's a town of Rome social media account, it needs to be clearly pointed out, not unlike the terms of use agreement, that it is a town of Rome social media account. That's important to message that in the same way that it's important to message that terms of use agreement, which is the next section. So the next section relates to a terms of use agreement. That language is there in the policy for your review. The idea being that that terms of use agreement should be posted on any social media account. For example, with Facebook, there's an about section. That terms of use agreement should be put in that about section. I'll let you review the terms of use agreement. Certainly happy to answer any questions that anyone has as far as the language used there after I hit the other, really two other points. The next section would be then the operating and maintaining of the social media account. The idea, it's drafted in the way that that an account would be really from its inception, right? So for example, number one wouldn't relate necessarily to an account that's existing, that we would get the authorization to be consistent with the policy. This is one that if we had a new account, the idea that there should be a introductory statement that is made, introducing people to that social media site. There should also be a link back to the town's website. Again, just like I had mentioned before, the information that's posted to that should link back where it's reasonable to the town website. That terms of use agreement needs to be placed on in a conspicuous location. The about section on Facebook, for example, is a good location for that. There is some guidelines for what that social media account should be joining, as far as the participation of that social media account with liking or joining other groups or pages. There is then a section that relates to violations of terms of use agreement. I think an important point to make there is that where there's a violation that's observed, certainly the authorized user may hide that comment or pull that comment, but then for a record keeping purpose and complete record keeping, there is a requirement that the administrator be notified of that. So it's not just one person reviewing that. It's likely if that were to happen, the administrator would be notified, and it may involve myself or somebody else to review that comment to make sure that we did appropriately delete it or hide it, if you will, when that took place. And then questions, comments, just a general guidance that those kind of questions and comments that relate to a specific department should be then forwarded to the specific department to get an answer if it does require a follow-up response. And then the final section being related to public records and retention of public records. You probably saw in the terms of use agreement reference that public records requests should be made to the clerk treasurer. The idea that the clerk treasurer would receive those public records requests and then compile that information. The authorized user would be the one responsible for gathering the information, providing it to the clerk treasurer to provide then to any requester. So that's a general overview. I'll pause there and take any questions that anybody has. Certainly happy to clarify anything.
Yeah, Nick? This policy includes existing accounts? It looks like it's just kind of tailored to new accounts.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think it's generally drafted to new accounts, but I think to be consistent with our policy, if we were going to adopt a policy, I think we would try to be consistent with that, and we would also establish who the authorized user of an account is and get that authorized user access.
Yeah, I think each one
I think
should,
it's important because where we have a social media account, for example, set up, that we may not have a record of the login information for it, I think we want to have that, right? And be sure that we have
well,
that.
also I think we need to have a discussion about existing accounts here in front of the board.
I don't disagree. I think that would be something that would be required, and I think that's pursuant to this policy. Certainly the policy is drafted because of the procedures. It has to be drafted for those new accounts. But I think the idea here is that any social media account that the town has should be approved by the town board, and I'm not sure that we have necessarily received approval for all of our accounts in the past.
Right,
So I
I
would
agree.
with you.
How many right now does the town have besides the webpage? Because that was one thing I'd asked about at one of our at the original meeting was, what analytics do we have on what we have? And especially isn't our Facebook page our primary source for information?
Did you want to answer? Or?
And our webpage.
So,
Our webpage is our primary source, so how often, what are the analytics on our Facebook page? How often is that really used?
I have not looked into the analytics page with any great detail to tell you if it's more or less. Town Web does do some tracking, like I can see a bell curve on there. I don't think that it's specific numbers, it just gives you an idea of when things would have maybe increased within, but I could ask Town Web if they would provide us with more specific data, but I have not done a deep dive into Facebook.
But Town Web is for our website.
Website,
Right,
yes.
I think what I'm hearing is a question about our social media sites, which is
Right.
Facebook, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have at least three. The town's Facebook page, police, Syracuse,
Fire.
fire, okay.
Syracuse and fire, okay.
Those are the four I'm most immediately aware of. I don't think there are others.
Because you do say in the front of here, you start with should be an extension of, and it should be, that language there, should be an extension. But do we, is it our intent to even allow any other social media outlets?
Well, and I guess that's the piece of bringing up the part about Town Web. If we did do a deep dive into the analytics and you find that Facebook is being, by a greater extent, utilized, that might lend into the decision, right?
Right, or
Well-
if we even wanna allow it and get ourselves opened up to that, but
And I
granted, we
think-
still need a policy.
And I think that this policy lends into that question, right? With the idea that by the time you all receive it, there should be some background information that you receive so you can kind of digest that and make a determination on whether or not you want to have these specific social media pages. And that's really that first step, that a department, the administrator should really put together that proposal as far as that information, so you all can consider that and make that determination. So I think that this policy works within that question to then vest the final decision with the town board for town associated social media presence.
How does the question about the analytics and how things currently work had to do with the current retention record for what we have so far? I mean, how are we retaining those records off of our social media platforms now? I mean, is that,
Other than going to the social media platform and going to find the post and the communication, I mean, there is not a separate source.
okay. Which was why you had brought this up in the first place with this expensive archive social, right?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a real problem in complying with the retention of records, because you could delete a post on social media and you'd have no record that it was ever even there.
So again, we never delete a post on social media. If it is derogatory, we may hide it, but we never delete anything. That does not mean that other individuals that make a post don't go back and say, I didn't want that out there, and delete that post.
I think they can delete their comments,
They could delete their comments, yes.
and then, but if there's a trail after them, a thread after them, that also gets deleted, I believe.
That I'm not sure on Facebook.
One of the portions of this social media use policy that I was focusing on was the post portion. And if you go out to the Archive Social, actually, or some of these other sites that have information on free speech and how it's affected government and the use of the social media. You know, the more you say, you know, like how they often say less is more, the more we say here, the more it could create a problem for us versus we do have to cover ourselves. But with allowing free speech too, I mean, there is the government speech doctrine. And we know over the last couple of years, government officials, even at higher levels than ourselves, and people within the different ranks, you know, have been brought up in court cases. So that's the one thing I'm wondering too, have you looked at some of this and how it flushes out through those different cases?
Sure. I just want to make sure I'm responding correctly. Are you talking about specifically the terms of use agreement that I have, that language?
Well, how
Or-
it would affect how it affects their free speech within their employment with the town, but also being part of government, because they do have, in those court cases,
So we do have.
stated, okay,
Yep, so we do have some guidelines within this that we are okay to, they would be consistent with those doctrines. on the operating and maintaining a social media account in the presence, right, of them as really speaking on behalf of the town, because that's what they're doing. I mean, it's likely the authorized user are not, posting as Nicholas Flanagan, they're posting as the social media site that's created, right, and they're creating a post.
Okay.
You know, this isn't extending, for example, specifically to somebody going after hours and posting on their own social media account. So I think there's kind of two things at play there. One is, so let's say I'm an authorized user, I log in, and I post on the Town of Rome's Facebook page, right? I'm an authorized user for it, I log in, and I post, it says Town of Rome, and I will post. That's very different than if I go after, you know, and post something on my own account and say something in that way, right?
Okay.
This is largely related to their use and posting as an authorized user on behalf of the town, and we can absolutely regulate that, and if they go against our policies and our terms, then that could be used as really discipline or an employee that posts, again, on behalf, it would be them posting on behalf of the town, really, as that town social media site.
On the first page, under social media use policy, down where it says post, shall mean any email, message, and then it goes on to say, comment or any and all other forms, means, and attempts at collaboration or communication that is uploaded from where? Posted to what? Or otherwise displayed on or transmitted by any social media account or network.
Mhm. That's just
So,
a general definition, right?
Well, okay.
I mean, a post can be any, it's hard to
It just seems
define
like
a
it's
post.
blurring the lines a little bit to me, and I'm not an attorney, I'm asking the question because it is information that's been brought up, in fact, by Archive Social, because I went out and reviewed their website based on the information that we were given, looking at the different government free speech websites based on their government speech doctrine, and this is what I highlighted, and that's why I'm raising the concern.
It's a good question, and I would just note that is, so it's always difficult to put together a definition.
Right.
I would say that this definition is encompassing what a post is. A post can be a post from an employee, it can be a post that the public puts on there. This is trying to define any kind of post, and I think it does. Then, as we talk about specific situations, I think we try to identify what type of post, and that's later on in the policy where you try to clarify the type of post. So as we look at definitions, they're going to be more general. But then so if you see later in the policy a specific reference to post that you feel is too ambiguous, that we should probably be clearer on. I wouldn't say that we are running afoul of anything by defining a post the way we are, because you do have to be general. I mean, post applies to a lot of different things, and I think that's what we're doing there in that definition.
And I was interested how the email, but it comes back to where I was saying, it was just coming back to where I was saying that at some point, the freedom of speech, you're now talking about emails, where from, uploaded to, from, posted to, from. You can have all the definitions you want, but less is more.
And
Less is more. And
maybe the email, we could probably remove that one. I think you've got a good point there. I'm not sure, I'm trying to think of all the situations with all the social media sites, but really email is something different. And I think there we could probably, because even so as I had put some language together, I was trying to think of not the post specifically, but the message somebody can send through something like Facebook. But that's not an email, it's more of a message.
Right, well, and you have message there too,
Yeah,
but
and so
even
I-
means or attempts at collaboration or communication, that's really getting down into the minutia of how people are talking to one another or conversing with one another, and that's what open government is all about. People are allowed to converse with
Yep.
the staff and their leaders, so at what point are we crushing people?
So, again, the main thing we're concerned with is what social media presence the town has.
Right.
And how the authorized user relays the information through that social media presence. So
Understood.
I absolutely get what you're saying. I think it does make sense to remove something like email. I do think that there's going to be broadness with a definition like that, but I also definitely understand the concern. Where we would want to be very specific would be references to the posts that we use later in our policy, because I think that we have to be somewhat general in our definition. But this isn't the first time you'll see this, certainly
Right.
not. This,
We're having a
Yep,
conversation,
this is
that's
to get some
all.
feedback, and I definitely think there's good reason to remove something like email. I do agree that, as I think about it, I'm not sure that email would really carry over that well to social media.
Thank you.
So I will remove that, and then, of course, as you review this, maybe do it with that lens on where posts are used elsewhere in the policy. If you feel that that's too general or ambiguous in light of, the situation that we're referencing it there in the policy, then I think we're gonna wanna clear that up. The type of post in those kind of situations where we are regulating it. So it's kind of two different things, but I do think that we'll remove, email in the definition.
Thank you.
And then too, wouldn't it be there too, when you get down to that the authorized user agreement, when they make a proposal to have a social media site for a given entity or department, they're gonna put together, it's like, this is what we wanna do with it, this is why we're gonna do it, and then we, as the board, we're going to review and potentially authorize them, and yes, you are authorized to post the following that information that you said you wanted to, that type of information that you wanted out there. And that's all they're authorized to post on the town, whatever, social media site,
On behalf of the town.
on behalf of the town. If they wanna post something derogatory about it, go on your own personal Facebook page and do that. Don't post it on our website or on our Facebook page,
Yeah, it's a good.
as a town employee, for example.
It's a good point. The
supervisor.
Town board ultimately has the authority to review those things and make those determinations on where, the social media presence would be and the type of communication that is made through that, I think, on behalf of the town.
I mean,
So-
we could, for example, I think we say we could use it to post information about a given entity, let's say the park, but not have the comments section be open.
That's what we talked
Yeah,
about the last meeting.
I agree. I'm looking at, everything on here is just, it's strictly informational. So if we leave it informational, we don't need comments. Most of the comments, congrats and likes, I mean, we don't need that. If it's just strictly informational, why
So I
even
think
bother with
that's
content?
the extension of this policy. So we start with the policy, but I think, just like Supervisor Barnhart said, that doesn't mean that we aren't going to have a conversation about social media presence and what our expectations are for relaying information or receiving comments. And so I think that's really the next step. That's not something that necessarily we reflect in the policy, but it's an absolute conversation piece that you'll have with the appropriateness, for or against having social media accounts and relaying information and what our expectations are.
Maybe it's an
Yeah, I think-
overall,
I think so we don't lose that thought. On your application for the user agreement form, you ought to have a box there that says comments will be allowed or not allowed.
I was also, as I was reviewing this before the meeting, I also think that there's probably value in putting on the bottom, date of town board authorization. So we don't lose sight of the fact that that is a requirement, with any of these policies, or with any of these social media accounts.
that's a good add. So it realistically could be part of an overall communication structure, our internal, external, how we do that with our engagement with our community, our presence within the community, and how we can talk with one another.
Great. Any other comments?
Should we mark up anything that we wanna send back to you, maybe?
Absolutely, you can send over any feedback that you have between now and back, for consideration, feel free to send it over to me. So I do have some notes here from our conversation. I'll make those markups. I do believe that the intention is to have staff review it and provide some comments as well. And so we'll compile all of that and report it to you at a future meeting.
Okay, so this is a work in progress.
It is, yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Number 14, discussion only, update on dead timber and brush ordinance enforcement.
Supervisor Barhide had asked for an update. There was a memo included in the packet with a chart and a map. Just as a reminder, when we talk about the 5 zones, those are on the back on that map. They're split into year 1 through 5, but you could think of them as zone 1 through 5. On the chart, you'll see the 5 areas then. The total number represents the total number of letters that were sent in that area for brush and timber, letting them know that they were outside of the brush and timber ordinance. It wasn't a violation, it was a letter to say, we'd like you to come into compliance. The compliant number are those that have come into compliance. Non-compliant are still works in progress, whether they're in 6 o'clock page. Whether they're in progress, if a ticket was issued, the percentage of compliance and non-compliance, and then the acknowledged letter just means that they called us and they acknowledged that they were in receipt of the letter, noting that they were outside of compliance with the ordinance. The compliance due dates then, you'll see when letters were first sent for all of the areas, the first due date that was provided in the letter, and if there was a second due date like in area 1, because we've gone through that area twice now, which is why you see that there were tickets issued. So, we just did the re-inspection for area 2, the first one. You can see there were 179 letters sent, 107 people came into compliance. 56 are still non-compliant and 16 are working on it. So it's a big percentage just from the first letter that are working to come into compliance. I know there was a mention of like, you know, you've seen that some aren't, but they might be later in the time frame to come into compliance based on their area within the town. I also noted on there just how we did for our brush and timber collection, that we had 563 loads, and I did get, I'm just gonna look quick, I did ask Steve at Arrowhead how they did, and Arrowhead, in addition to our 563 loads, collected 720 loads.
Same size trucks or
I think their trucks are a little smaller.
smaller?
They're not dump trucks. They're
Pickups or
Single axle.
trailers?
We've got a couple of dump trucks, but they're not as big.
Jamie, I think there's a couple of areas here that we could maybe add to. I don't want to go into the weeds too far here, but I was wondering if we couldn't add another column here after tickets issued to show us which ones, how many of them have been adjudicated, and of those, how many were convictions.
So we can work on that, but that likely would come later, because those 35 are working through the court process. Nick
Yep.
did share, and he could add that a third of those have cleaned up their property either before or directly after a pretrial and meeting with him.
No, so I've had pretrial, so just talking about zone 1, I believe we've had the 35 now set for an initial appearance. That's the first step that they're going to have when there's a citation issued, is they have an initial appearance date. That's where they enter a plea, or they don't appear, right? If they enter a plea of not guilty, it gets set for a pretrial conference with myself. If we don't resolve it at a pretrial stage, we go to a trial, and there's an adjudication in that way. If it gets resolved at a pretrial, there may be an agreement reached that goes to the judge. If it's acceptable to the court, it gets signed in, and so there's a couple different paths that when you say that, it's hard to reflect it, okay? Because number one, maybe we'd want to know how many of those citations issued didn't respond, okay? Because those are going to be, if they didn't respond in any way, then it's going to be entered in, as a no contest plea and defaulted, okay? Now, they may have not responded because they cleaned up the property and just paid the citation. There may be some, different reasons behind it. Just because they don't respond doesn't mean they didn't clean up the property. Just like because they pled not guilty, doesn't mean they're not going to clean up the property. I've had pretrials with all of the not guilties, I believe, at this point. And there's various circumstances related to those pretrial conferences that typically put together a plan to work towards cleaning up the property. Some of them are cleaned up by the time I even have a pretrial conference with them. And so I can tell you that from the court's perspective.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking that we should be adding 20 columns here to account for everything.
It's hard to account for, my point is, it's hard to reflect
I guess
just one thing in a column.
where I'm headed here is when we have a conviction, that brings us down to our chapter 287:17, which says a conviction of a violation of this article shall be subject to a fine of not more than $200 plus court costs. Each day the subject property remains in violation of this article shall constitute a separate violation. I'm not sure that we're going to ever go there or want to go there. We may need to have to somehow change that to bring it into what reality really is.
Well, so that is what could happen. I can tell you that with nuisance violations and I believe one or two with these kind of violations, when I get to the pretrial stage, I explain that. It's not that we are going to issue a citation every day. It's possible, but I think you need to identify that the violation continues to exist. That's one step.
Right.
That needs to continue.
Maybe that's the column we need to add then.
That's,
Something.
I think, the column that you're looking for, because we need to know if the violation still exists, to know whether or not there's a need to go to that maybe more frequent citation.
Yeah, I'm not so interested in issuing citations as I am in getting the lots cleaned up.
Agreed. Yeah, I understand. I think I've taken that kind of feedback and I can speak for myself and what I've observed from the court, but I think that's also been the court's approach as well.
Yeah, so if we could add a little bit more granularity to the chart, I think that'd be great.
I think we will do that though after we get through our areas, because it's gonna take several months to get through that court process, so.
Well, Area 1 is going on right now.
It's going on right now, but then we're also getting the re-inspections done, and since it's the 35, I think January, which, we aren't that far away from at this moment, provided we don't have some sort of crazy snow cover, then we would go back and touch base with the municipal court and say, of that 35, where are we with individuals that haven't come into compliance, and have that follow-up number. Because then we will go back out to seek are they making progress? Did they decide to make progress? Did they clean up the lot and just not say anything?
Or are they completely ignoring us?
And you will want to coordinate with the police department at that point. I can just share that where I've had pretrials that somebody appears at the pretrial and says, I've cleaned it up. Well, we do a follow-up inspection. I believe it's the officers right now that go out there, maybe take a picture, and then provide that at the next court date, and the court reviews it.
I thought that was Emily, wasn't it?
I'm not sure that Emily is doing the follow-up to my pretrials. I think
Not once the citation's been issued, then it
okay.
becomes a police department matter.
So my point is, I think we will want to coordinate that, because here they probably don't have the same information that we have over there at that point in time.
But given you started with 252 and, you had 35 tickets issued, you're talking it's a small percentage, like that people are taking it seriously and are working at it.
Yeah, except 33% is still a large number.
In one section of town, you mean, right? Or, you mean overall non-compliant?
No, just the first section.
Compliant. Oh, the first section.
Maybe we should just take that percentage of okay.
So, well, that's a good question, I guess. What's that 32%? At what point in time is that non-compliant? Is that a rolling number? Is that 32%, 35 off of 252?
I'd have to-
Doesn't seem right.
It's the
doesn't
difference
seem
between
right.
those that are compliant and 100%.
13.8%.
If you
Yeah.
do the 35.
That number just feels high,
It is.
frankly.
It's
to-
actually 14% rounded,
Thank
not
you.
32.
Thank you.
And it's probably
That's
because
the tickets, that's the 35 count, yes.
it's a formula that's input for compliant versus non-compliant, and so maybe that and in other columns where tickets haven't been issued, that's why the formula is there, but maybe that once tickets have been issued, that formula needs to change in that percentage of non-compliant.
Because
Well, I thought
That
if they
sounds-
become compliant, it goes back to the second column there, and that 170 number goes up to 171 or 172.
But you also have people that are making the progress, right? Which is why you're still gonna, you're that 28 in progress, is figuring in back to your, plus your 54 that are non-compliant. Again, which is why it's just it's a formula that's in that spreadsheet.
And again, that column doesn't close the feedback loop back from the citation and the court process, because I can tell you, absolutely, there are a number of the pre-trials I've had that either resolved before they even talked to me, or resolved it shortly after, and those ones should increase the number there, but
Right.
they haven't because it hasn't been.
Okay, well,
We
we
haven't
can,
got through
we
the
can
whole
fix
cycle.
that somehow, right?
Yeah, we just need to get through the cycle, right? Like we did 5 years worth of work in a summer. We're getting there.
I know. That's why I say I didn't want to go too far into the weeds here, but I think we need to have a little bit more clarification.
How many loads was that for Arrowhead?
720.
Thanks.
And that was over 300 and 300 plus lots. Give me 2 seconds and I'll look up the numbers specific again. 720 loads over 380 lots they collected.
How many days?
I don't know how many hours it took. I wasn't provided that number.
Do you have a plan in place? Well, it can wait. I was just curious if you had a plan in place as to how we're, for next year, if maybe we can ramp up the interest on, in areas 4 and 5, that we can get the non-compliant more interested in cooperating.
Well, I think you see that as
True, but
as people know the seriousness in which the town is taking it, it wraps up itself.
well, if we're not, tickets seem to be what people notice, but if we don't wanna give them tickets, and our side of town doesn't really seem to be, I mean, granted, a lot of people in Arrowhead, those are good pickup numbers. I know they work very, very hard for us every year, but we still have a long way to go, but thank you.
Anything more on 14? All right, 15, the board may go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C, considering employment, promotion, and compensation or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility for the purposes of upcoming employment, termination, and consideration of reemployment prior to WRS 1-year separation due to unusual skill, and town administrator 12-month evaluation. Can I get a motion, please?
I move that we go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, starting from my left.
Yes.
Enter yes.
Hasdall, yes.
Barheit, yes.
We are in closed session. Microphones are still on.
The microphones are still on and the camera stays live in this room. Friendly reminder, we will exit over into the into the office. You're gonna take care of that. I'll take care of that. What I
So you had a really good point.
come back to grab it? We'll start with the one and we'll go to the other one. So I'll call.
2.5 hours,
Switch up.
back and forth.
Which is that when they get a citation,
And now this
they
week.
sometimes want to
Well,
utilize
we're,
that
this
pickup.
shouldn't take too long.
So I think we need to make sure that our citations, if we get to that point, coincide, opportunities to do it, because I've had pre-trials with people that say, we have kids, we're elderly. I do think that was a really good point, and I wrote it down. Because it's not about citations, I wanna make sure that
It's other than people that don't know how to pick up or don't have the help with the pickup.
it is,
You better
yes.
go.
And some of them don't have the means to get away, and so they walk the pickup. They walk the
None of it
pickup.
matches up, it's completely different. The wrong one, so.
I don't know at this point, it's out there.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah,
saying, if, people are showing up at 3.
It's too bad, I don't know how that exactly happens, if we send that to them, or if they pick up somehow. I thought we actually go into their website and put our information in.
It's just
we
they
wouldn't
say
have that-
Santa's gonna be there at 5, but Santa's gonna be here at 2.
Yeah, let's hope not too many people look at that.
Yeah,
Travel
that's-
Wisconsin and go with Facebook and, whatever they find on their
You- you be-
store and.
I'm so surprised at how many people are not on Facebook just because they refuse to, they
Oh,
just don't want to.
Facebook people are dropping off of, like, my kids will tell me Facebook's for old people. So they're on Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook is kind of like,
Yeah, and what's the other one?
but a lot of
Instagram,
people are
yeah.
still go to Facebook, I mean, and our
I just thought I
community
would-
is old people, average age is over 60 here, so I think Facebook is still very relevant for us.
I have to be honest, I hardly even use it.
My kids,
I
won't
don't.
even
If I'm
acknowledge
not-
if I send them a message, I have to Snapchat, snap.
No. I do a lot of messaging, just on, message.
Crazy.
That's-
Good night.
You too. Figure out people's preferred place.
You're within that basement for the last, 3 hours. sunshine when they're not using as much power, and then be able to throw it back into the grid at night when some solar panels aren't generating.
Even your wife abandoned you. She'll be back.
No, she drove herself.
Oh, she drove herself. She won't be back. Feels good. Well, I suppose that's because the building is in unoccupied mode. It doesn't think there are people around here at 8 o'clock at night.
That's true. You think the button will work from here? Should I try it?
Might. Well, she'll know if she goes out there and the truck is warm.
Is it honking?
And if the truck isn't warm, then it didn't work.
That's true.
All right, number 16, the board reserves the right to enter into open session authorized by Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, sub 2, to possibly take action from the closed session and continue with the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
Move to return to open session.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call from my left.
Jamadi, yes.
Minter, yes.
Basil, yes.
Barheit, yes.
And we are taking no action. So number 17, next agenda items. I believe you have those.
Yep, next agenda items, in December, we get our annual report from Visit Rome, our destination marketing organization, so we'll have a report from Lisa Kubish. We'll have a couple plan commission items. We do have to adopt a resolution for the WEDC Vibrant Spaces grant that says the board agrees that we would apply, so we will put that resolution on, and then we'd have a closed session again.
And special skills policy.
And special skills policy. I don't think we'll be ready back again for social media.
Yeah, I'm thinking it'll probably be not this next one, but the
Yeah,
one
it's
after
pretty heavy duty for just
Yeah, I had a
Christmas.
couple items.
Mm-hmm.
There was a gentleman here, and I can't recall his name without looking back at my notes, but sometime during the summer, he questioned the fact that we do not have anything in our ordinance regarding new building and lot elevations between lots, or grading between lots.
That's
And
right.
I thought that was a good idea. Most towns have an ordinance like that, and I think we should pursue it.
That's something that the county is actually, isn't that, well, yeah, the county,
The other thing is, I don't know whether we want to put it on the next agenda, but I was kind of curious as to when we might finish off our discussion on wakeboard boat operations.
December.
Start that first of the year, I was thinking. We can start with that again the first of the year.
Okay.
I have another study that was done in Minnesota. I'm just waiting for approval from the author to use it.
And I guess we pretty much covered the business signage on town property right away.
Did
Oh,
we
we're
talk
kinda-
about the elevation piece at
Is that a board meeting?
commission?
So.
I remember the
it's been-
gentleman came,
It's
but
been some time, and the only thing I recall, kind of being on the spot here, is I believe that I had maybe had some conversation with the zoning administrator. Would it be all right if we internally meet with staff?
Sure.
I'd like to talk to the zoning administrator, get her up to speed with the past conversation. I know there was some conversation that the past zoning administrator and I had, and I just want to find my notes, bring that back, get Emily up to speed, and then kind of report that. to
Yeah, I
you
just
all.
didn't want it to drop away. I thought it was an important topic.
and I think we talked about it at one plan commission, but I just don't recall the,
Yeah, I'm not sure if we did.
I don't think, since, because
that
I
involve-
remember it coming
Bob,
up, the
does that involve runoff?
meeting.
I'm sorry?
Is that,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
yes, water.
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I just remembered it coming up the meeting before I was actually, seated. There was a gentleman sitting back there and they had just built their home. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah.
And the water, it was over at Lake Air, was running into their yard. I don't think since I've been on here, that we've had that or
I don't
that it
believe-
came to plan commission either.
I don't believe you have.
And I think that type of thing with like, how properties, that goes to like a county level depending on site, I can't think of the word right now, Nick, you know what I'm,
I do.
yeah.
Yep,
Plot plan.
so
it evades, it's
I
a
believe it was mentioned, like Lori said, I believe that it was referred to staff. I remember talking with Greg
Yeah.
about it. I definitely talked to Greg about it. Actually put some draft language together, so it's further than nothing.
Okay.
I know there were some concerns, and I don't know that it got taken up after that point. I'd like to get Emily up to speed, have that conversation,
That
and
might
be
be
able to
good for
present
Plan
you with that
Commission then.
information. I know there were a couple considerations that need to be presented to you all to make some decision points from. I also know that I definitely have draft language for an ordinance, so we can present all that to you, but I wanna talk to Emily first and get her
Great.
up to speed.
I think there's also, I wouldn't call it ordinances, there might be state information on it as far as runoff between properties. I've seen it somewhere, I couldn't tell you where though. I don't think it was county, I'm pretty sure it was state.
But this,
You'd have to check the wording on it.
but there's some inspections that our building inspector does, but there's some that go to the county that they do for site elevation and that sort of thing. There's a difference between what they're each responsible for inspecting.
I think
That-
the only thing I
that's what
recall
meant.
that the
That's
county
all I-
was ever concerned was putting up matting while you're building to prevent runoff from your property. But that elevation between properties is a different animal.
Right, right.
We'll look into it. Anything else?
I was gonna suggest ARPA, but then I thought, no, we gotta wait till we hear from We Energies, so that'll be a January topic probably.
Maybe yeah, put that on the list for a January update, or maybe they'll have some more news about numbers, I don't know.
I know it'll be after the first of the year, cause they'll have the
December
holiday in there too,
31st,
so.
yeah.
Yep.
I just hope it's a go. We can just get some word out to get people, and I'll contact that woman again to just give her some addresses that I found that didn't hear about it.
Okay, you gonna get a motion for adjournment?
Well, next meeting date and time, December 15th at 5 PM.
Yes. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Meeting adjourned at 7:58 PM.